record. I'm sorry, folks. Okay, we're recording now. So anyway, it's an offense if the player deliberately touches the ball with their hand or their arm. A little bit of added language this year is including moving their hand or arm towards the ball. I think that inclusion of those few words really helps us to clarify that we really want to be looking for situations where players move their hand toward the ball or their arm toward the ball. That needs to be a really defining feature of a potential handball decision. If the hand moves toward the ball, that's going to increase the likelihood that we have a handball decision. But again, the general premise of this is not changing. Deliberate touch on the ball by the hand or the arm, including moving the hand towards the ball, that's generally going to be an offense. Moving on is where we start to get to see some of the refinement of the law. So we are going to call a handball if a player gains possession or control of the ball after it has touched their hand or their arm, and then either A, they score in the opponent's goal, or B, they create a goal-scoring opportunity. So this is a scenario, again, they're not talking about deliberate or not. They're not talking about anything about that. They're just saying if the ball touches the hand or the arm and then they score immediately as a result, or they create a goal-scoring opportunity, for the fairness of the game, we want to call that a handball, even if it's not deliberate. So again, this is a direct quote for the laws of the game, and please notice that the word deliberate is now no longer part of this part of the law. So if somebody, even accidentally, touches the ball or gains possession of the ball after it's touched their arm, and then they score a goal or they create a goal-scoring opportunity, we want to call that a handball, again, even if it's accidental. Please also notice that the word obvious is not present when it's discussing a goal-scoring opportunity. So it doesn't have to be an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, the same kind of language we use when we think about giving a red card for a foul that happens with a goal-scoring opportunity. It does not have to be an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. It just has to be, generally speaking, a goal-scoring opportunity. So if a player accidentally handles the ball and that leads immediately to either the ball going in the back of the net, or they create a goal-scoring opportunity for themselves directly as a result of the handball, we want to call a foul for that infraction. We have a question here. Just hold on a second. Can we comment on whether the shoulder is considered part of the arm, particularly if the player uses the shoulder to direct the ball? So the shoulder is not the hand or the arm. They very, very specifically reference the hand or the arm, not the shoulder. So the shoulder is not part of the hand or the arm, therefore it is legal if it touches the shoulder. That's the top of the shoulder area, the sort of chest area, etc. It is not the hand or the arm. All right. It is also an offense if a player scores in the opponent's goal directly from their hand or their arm, even if it's accidental, and that includes the other team's goalkeeper. So if some reason a goalkeeper is in the other penalty area, in their attacking penalty area, they come up for a corner kick when they're losing by a goal. That's usually when you see it. If it accidentally goes off the arm of one of the attacking players directly into the opponent's goal, that's automatically a handball, even if it's accidental. So it doesn't matter if it's deliberate or not, and we'll see some clips to help us clarify that a little bit. So anytime it touches the hand or the arm and goes immediately into the goal, automatically we're going to call a handball and award a direct free kick going out. This gets back to some of the questions about fairness. Even if it's accidental, it's not fair to the game to have a goal get scored off of an arm or a hand, even if it's on accident. Any questions on this? Okay, now we're going to start talking about when it's usually offense. And again, this is where the laws of the game are giving us a little bit more clarity on how to handle these situations. So we had a question here: if a defender accidentally touches the ball and gains control, is that a handball? No. If not a handball, if the defender accidentally touches it, it's just the attacker. So again, with this, we want to be really, really clear. Scoring the opponent's goal directly from their hand or the arm, that's referencing the attacking player, not the defending player. So that scenario would not exist for the defending player. So it is usually offense if a player touches the ball with their hand or their arm when A, the hand or the arm has made their body unnaturally bigger. Now that's some sort of guiding terminology that we've been using for a number of years now that have been codified into the laws of the game. So if the hand or the arm has made their body unnaturally bigger, we usually are going to have a handball there. Now, how to interpret unnaturally bigger really is the crux of this sentence. And so the guidance that we're offering now throughout the professional level and all the way down through the grassroots level is, if the arm is outside the normal silhouette of the body, we consider that unnaturally bigger. So if the hands are within the silhouette or as tight to the body as possible, we don't want to call a handball if it touches that part, the arm, in that scenario. But if the hand or the arm is out away from the body or out of the natural silhouette, so if you're looking at a person directly from the front, if their arms are out to the sides, that's beyond the natural silhouette of their body. If they have turned to the side, then obviously the body is more narrow at that point. And if the hands are out in front of them, then we're going to have a potential handball because the hand is outside of the natural silhouette of the body. So even though that terminology is not in the laws, the idea of the natural silhouette of the body, that's the best descriptive language we can think of to use to help to understand what it means by making the body unnaturally bigger. Really quickly, can we have a show of hands? Is everybody able to hear me okay? Perfect. Jeff, you've commented a couple times on not being able to hear me. Everybody else seems to not have a problem, so it might be something on your end. I apologize. So anyway, that helps us understand a little bit the idea of the body being unnaturally bigger. And so therefore, really think about what that means for the hands to be outside the natural silhouette of the body. Question here, is there a thing as such as naturally bigger to distinct from the idea of unnaturally? Not really, except for when the arms and hands, and we'll start to talk about this here in a second, when the arms and the hands are involved in a natural play. So for example, if the player jumps up a little bit and the arms come out to the sides a little bit, we would expect that when a player is jumping. So natural movements where the hands are away from the body, and we'll see some examples of this when we look at the videos, those would be scenarios where maybe it's okay. Because again, please look at the word here, usually. We have this word and it's underlined. That's my my editing there to underline it. But the terminology of usually in offense gives us the opportunity to say if that hand was sort of naturally away from the body, player was running, player was jumping. If it's natural, then we don't want to punish them for it. So we have to use our judgment and our football understanding a little bit here. But we really want to look for scenarios where that arm is outside the silhouette of the body in an unnatural way. Any other questions on that? What if the player is protecting the face? Again, we've already covered this idea of the silhouette of the body. If the hands are within the silhouette of the body, which includes the face, then we're not going to call handball. So if the hands are up in the face and are protecting their face from getting hit by the ball, the ball would have hit them in the face otherwise. So therefore, we would not call handball because the hands were within the natural silhouette of the body. Any considerations for girls who have a habit of naturally running with their arms out? I think all players have a habit of naturally running with their arms out regardless of girls. So no, we do not change our considerations for the men's game or the women's game when it comes to calling a handball. If the arms are unnaturally away from the body, then we don't, or then we call handball. Question here, if a defender purposely handles the ball and then it goes into the defender's goal, is it a penalty kick or a goal? That's where we would want to allow a goal. We would consider that advantage. Another question here, any consideration for girls protecting the chest? Once again, I would ask you to answer your own question by considering the idea of the silhouette of the body. If the hands are within the silhouette of the body, we are not going to call handball. So if they are protecting their face or their chest, or for the gentleman on the field, another sensitive area of the body, as long as the hands are within the silhouette of their body, we are likely not going to call a handball. So any protection of any part of the body is going to be within the silhouette of the body, and therefore we are not going to call this. So again, with all of you asking questions about protecting the body, please remember we're talking about the silhouette of the body. If the ball would have otherwise hit a part of their body, but instead it hits the hand, we do not call a handball. Moving us along, another consideration here, the ball touches the hand or arm when the hand or arm is above or beyond their shoulder, unless the player deliberately plays the ball, which then touches their hand or the arm. So, generally speaking, the hand above the shoulder or above their head is not a normal or natural position for the hand to be in. So if the ball hits the hand when the hand is in that kind of position, generally speaking, we are going to call a foul. The only scenario where that changes is if the player kicks the ball or heads the ball into their own hand or arm, which is above the head, and again, or above the shoulder. And again, we will see a video example of this when we get to that portion of the evening. So if that one doesn't make much sense, just hold on to your questions for right now. There's a very good video where we can analyze what exactly it means for the hand or the arm to be above the shoulder, and then what it means for the player to deliberately play the ball, which then touches their own hand or arm above the shoulder. So if the hand is above the shoulder, that's an unnatural position. We're going to want to call a handball unless the player whose hand it touches is the one who played the ball directly into their own hand. Generally speaking, if somebody kicks the ball or heads the ball into their own hand, regardless of where it is, we're more than likely not going to call a handball because that's not a deliberate action. We're not going to punish them for that. The only caveat to that would be naturally if it was an attacker and they created a goal scoring opportunity for themselves, because again, we don't want goal scoring opportunities created from the hand. This applies even if the ball comes from a short distance. So for a long time, we had this consideration of if the ball is coming from a very short distance, we are not going to call a handball because the player didn't have much time to react to it. So you'll notice that both of these things here, both the arm being in an unnatural position or making their body bigger and being above the shoulder, all has to do with the position of the arm solely. So it's just these decisions that we're talking about all focus directly on the position of the arm or the hand. So the distance that the ball comes is irrelevant in these scenarios. If they have made their body unnaturally bigger or if their arms and hands are up above their shoulders, it does not matter how far the ball has come because that's unnatural for the hand to be there, and we don't want that to be happening in the game. So regardless of the distance from which the ball comes, we want to call a handball usually when the arms and hands are in an unnatural position, making their body unnaturally bigger, or if their hands are up above the shoulders. Any questions on the content on this slide? Okay, then moving along to the next one. Except for the circumstances we just referenced. Again, hands in an unnatural position, making the hand or making the body unnaturally bigger, or the arms up above the shoulders. It is usually not going to be an offense if the ball touches a player's arm or hand directly from the player's own body or their own head. Meaning if they play the ball themselves, if it bounces up off their leg, if it hits them in the chest and then rolls down to their arm, those kind of scenarios, it's usually not an offense if the ball touches the player's hands when it comes off their own body. We see this most poignantly with defenders who block shots or with people who try to head the ball out and it comes off of their body unusually and hits their arm. We don't want to punish that because those are not deliberate actions. A player trying to kick the ball is not going to deliberately kick the ball into their own hand. That's not a normal football play. We wouldn't expect a player to do that. We don't want to punish them if it happens because clearly it was not an intended action. If it comes directly from the head or the body of another player who is close. So again, if the body deflects or if it's headed directly into an arm from a very close position, we don't want to call a handball. Now, please remember, this is excluding the circumstances we discussed just a moment ago. So a moment ago, we talked about if the body is made unnaturally bigger by the hand or the arm, or if the arms are above the shoulder, then the proximity that the ball is coming from. The closeness of the ball's delivery is irrelevant in those situations. We want to call handball here. If the hand is not in those situations, meaning it's just down by the sides or it's in a normal, natural position, and it comes from really, really close, generally speaking, we are not going to call a handball there. If the hand or the arm is close to the body and does not make the body unnaturally bigger. So this is one where, in particular for defenders, we see it regularly. So I'm going to help try to clarify this a little bit here and give you some direction on how to interpret this. If the player is keeping their arms as close as possible to their body, meaning they've tucked it into their chest, they've got it back behind their back, or they've got them glued to their sides, we don't want to call a handball if the ball hits their hand. Again, we're human beings. We were born with hands. We can't cut them off before a soccer game. There's nothing we can do about having hands and arms. So if a player is making an effort to keep their hands out of the play, meaning they're tucking them behind their back, or they're keeping them tucked really, really closely into the chest, we do not want to call a handball if the ball then hits them in the arms while they're tucked in or they're tucked behind. So that's hopefully a clarifying statement there. If the player is making an effort to keep their hands out of the play, primarily by tucking them in close to the body, we are not going to call a handball usually for those scenarios. When a player, whoops, I don't know what word I was using there, I apologize. When a player falls, sorry, there's a little typo, I apologize, folks. When a player falls to the ground and the hand or arm is between the body and the ground to support the body, not extended out to the side. So again, we see this a lot when players slide for a slide tackle, or if they're just falling down. If a player falls down or goes to ground and the hand or the arm is between the body and the ground to support the body, we are not going to call that a handball. So if a player puts his hand on the ground to slide and the ball gets kicked into their hand or the ball hits their hand, we do not want to call a handball. Now, please note, if they start the slide and the hand is underneath the body, but as they continue the slide, they extend their hand way out to the side and it is no longer supporting the body, then we do have a handball in that scenario. But if a player goes to ground and is helping support their body as they go to ground, we do not want to call a foul here. So a question here, what if a player is trying to gain control of a passed or intercepted ball, and in the process of the foot play, the ball hits the hand or arm and clearly helps control the player? Players don't tuck their arms in this situation. That is a very good question. That is why the word usually is not, or excuse me, is present in this law. So if a player has their hands and arms to the sides and they trap it, or they come off the chest and they bring their hands in close to corral the ball a little bit, then yes, we want to call a handball there. But please remember all the way back to the beginning. I'm going to go back to the very, very first thing that we read. Deliberately touches the ball, including moving their hands or arms towards the ball. The scenario that you just asked about is a perfect example of where we see players try to trap the ball and move their hands or their arms inward, additional movement towards the ball to help corral the ball. So the law still gives us some leeway to call a handball there, even if it comes off the chest or it comes off the foot, but they're bringing their hands in as an extra tool to help trap the ball or control the ball. Absolutely, we can call handball there. That's why the word usually is in this sentence, and it's why the very, very first one that we looked at said any additional movement of the hands or the balls. So if they move their hands inward to help corral the ball, absolutely we can call a handball there. Now, just a reminder, folks, a few of you are using the Q&A feature to submit questions. Please use the chat feature. It's significantly easier for me to keep track of, and it means everybody can see the questions as we go. So please do not use the Q&A feature anymore. Please use the chat feature. So just to summarize really quickly, scenarios where we're not usually going to have a foul if it touches the player's hand or arm: directly from their own head or body, directly from the head or body of another player who is close. If the hand or arm is close to the body and does not make it unnaturally bigger. And when a player falls to ground and the hand or arm is between the body and the ground and helping to support the body. Those are the times that we want to help the game by not calling a foul. Any other additional questions? That is all of the text that is in the laws of the game as it relates to handball. If you go and look up the laws of the game on the IFAB website or the IFAB app on your phone, all the text that we just went through is the exact text you will see in the laws of the game. So it's significantly more reduced language and hopefully clearer language for you to utilize. So a question here, do you know why IFAB decided to deem it not deliberate if a player kicks into their own arm above their head, but deliberate if a close by player kicks it into an arm above the shoulder? Seems like having an arm above the shoulder should always be given its unnatural position. It's actually not true, and we'll see a video that shows a perfect example of a player whose arms are above the shoulders in a very natural way. So I would ask you to hold on to that question. There are two clips, only one of which we'll see tonight, but when we see that one, I will bring up the other clip as well to help understand why we don't want to call these. But they almost always have to do with defenders who are attempting to clear a ball. As they're moving backwards, their hands go up a little bit, and sometimes the ball just goes off their own body into their own hand, that we don't want to call that. Question here, should these laws be modified for fouls in the box? Absolutely not. So we've made it very, very clear that if attackers handle the ball into the attacking phase of play, meaning they're going to create a goal scoring opportunity, even if it's accidental, we're going to call a handball. When it comes to the defenders in the penalty area, all the things we just talked about. Is the body unnaturally bigger? Is it deliberate action? Is it moving hand towards the ball? All those things are what we use to decide if we should call a penalty kick or not. So there's no modification required in the penalty area. The laws of the game make it very clear about what is a handball and what is not. So we do not need to modify anything. Question here, arms and hands close to the body, but the player clinches fists and hits the ball without moving his hand away from the body. Once again, if the hands are into the body, even if they clinch the fist, the whole point of this is the ball would have hit their body anyway, even if their hand wasn't there. So in those scenarios, regardless if they clinch their fist or not, the laws don't say anything about clinching your fist. So please don't read extra material into the laws of the game. If the hand, clenched fist or not, is within the frame of the natural body, we're not going to call a handball. Don't go looking for things to do. That's definitely something where we're looking for a reason to call a handball. Don't do it. If the ball's going to hit the body regardless of the hand being there or not, we're not going to call a handball. And we'll see an example of that here when we get into the clips. Any other questions? Okay, then I will move us along to the video analysis. So these clips came from the most recent Futuro deck, and so they are chosen specifically to help us continue to analyze the laws of the game as they are being modified. So all the clips we're going to look at here are all recently selected to help continue to clarify the modifications to the laws of the game. So here we go. So the great part about these clips is they're all from after 2018, which means we have the VAR review. So none of us here will ever referee a game at this level. I understand that, but I chose these videos for our analysis because it really gives us the opportunity to zoom in and really see the different components of what I'm talking about. So the whole point of clip analysis is to train your eyes on what to look for, the specific movements, the specific patterns. And these clips that we're going to look at, though they're not relevant to the games that we referee on a regular basis, they do help us to analyze. So I'll continue now to play this clip, and you'll be able to see the VAR analysis in slow motion and repeatedly, and particularly watch the actions of this player as this ball hits the arm. So again, that's the moment of truth for us. If you're having a little bit of choppy video, what that means is I'll pause it right on the freeze frame and you'll have the moment of truth you need. So this is a perfect example of a player who is trying to keep his hands and arms close to the body. So he's got his arm tucked into the side. When you watch this as it develops, you can see as he runs into this play that he is tucking his hand in as close to his arm, or excuse me, as to his body as he can. So this is a perfect example of the kind of scenario where we do not want to call a handball. He has got his arms tucked into the sides. It hits him on the elbow, which is right into his ribs. There's literally in this scenario nowhere he can put his arms in a natural way to get them out of the way of the ball hitting it. And so because this hand is in a very natural position and it's tight into the body, we do not want to call a handball here. So the answer for FIFA is this is no handball because the arm is tucked in very tight to the body. He is trying to keep his hands out of this play while he blocks the shot. And most importantly, they are tucked in right against his ribs. There's nowhere else he could put them. And so there's no way for him to avoid having this ball hit his hand. So therefore, no handball. Questions on that clip? Great. So then we'll move on to the next one. Again, if it's choppy for you, I will pause it in the moment of truth so you can see the important decision-making components. So you can see in this scenario here, this ball is very unexpected. If we come back and we watch the original clip, the defender who's back here assumes this attacker is going to trap the ball. Perfectly reasonable assumption. And you can see here when this play starts that his hand is in a very natural position, right down next to his body, not out away from the body, really tight in close to the body. And so when it fast forwards a little bit, you can see his arm right next to his body. It's not out away from the body. At the moment it strikes it, his hand is directly next to his leg, not out away from the body. He has not made his body unnaturally bigger. His hands are close to his body. We do not want to have a handball here. Now, it's important when we're calling handball to recognize the kind of scenario and to be able to recognize that his hand, as this ball approaches, is next to his body. Because what happens next is when the ball hits the hand, it knocks the hand back and makes it seem like, in that scenario right there, it looks like the hand is out away from the body. But that happens because the ball knocks the hand back. And so we have to train our eyes to look for what the position of the hands and body are before the potential foul happens, because that's the information we need for calling handball. If you just see the ball hit the hand and then all your brain processes is that hand is away from the body, you might incorrectly call a handball here. So again, one more opportunity to look at it as the ball comes. His hand is right next to his body, not extended out away from the body. And so when it hits the hand unexpectedly, it's right next to the body. He has not made his body bigger as a result, and so therefore we have no handball here. Any questions on that analysis? Okay, then I'll move us along to the next one. I'll let this play from the very beginning, and then I'll fast forward to the very end because that's where it actually matters. All right, here we go. So here's the initial play, free kick directly into the wall. And now I'm going to go to the end so that you can see the replay here, because the replay is what's important of this one. And in particular, watch this replay because that's going to give you what you need to see. Here we go. So this is a scenario where very clearly the ball hits the hands of the defender. Oh, trying to freeze it right on the right part. So you can see here right before it hits, he's got his hands directly in front of his body. For those of you who were asking earlier about protecting the chest, this is a perfect example. So his hands are inside his natural silhouette. So when I talk about the natural silhouette, this right here is exactly what I'm talking about. His arms are not any wider than his shoulders. They are tucked into his chest. It's a protective move. But if the ball had not hit his hands here, the ball would have gone directly into his chest. And therefore, as a result, we do not want to call a handball here. For those of you that are saying something about the attacking players in the wall, yes, this is from the 2018 World Cup. And so therefore, they would not have happened yet. This is from the 2018 World Cup. The law change that kept the attackers out of the wall had not been written yet. So that's why the attackers could be in the wall. How lovely it is. We don't have to worry about that anymore. But anyway, as you can see here, this is a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier with the hands being within the silhouette. It definitely hits him in the hands, but it would have hit him in the chest otherwise. The hands are within the natural frame of the body, the natural silhouette of the body. So therefore, we do not want to call handball. For those of you earlier who were asking about a player protecting their face or their chest or other areas of their body that are sensitive, this is the perfect example of a clip that shows you how we want to allow players to protect their body as long as their hands aren't extended out away from their body. So situation here, no handball. Any questions on that analysis? All right, then moving along to the next clip. ARs, that's how you get a bug out of your face, if anybody's ever curious. And now the corner kick. We'll get to see replays. So this is a perfect example of a hand being above the shoulder in an unnatural way. His hands are up above his shoulders. That's not a natural position for a player who is jumping for a ball. So in this scenario, even though the ball is coming from a very close distance, and even though the defender doesn't know anything about it because his eyes are closed and his back is turned, this is a scenario where we want to call a handball because the arm is above the shoulder in an unnatural position, making the body unnaturally bigger and blocking a shot here. And so as you can see from the next replay, arm up above the shoulder, out of the way of the body, not within the silhouette. This is not a natural position for someone who's jumping to head the ball. He's done this deliberately, and he has blocked a shot. So therefore, we want to award a penalty kick, a direct free kick, obviously, for handball in the penalty area is a penalty kick. This is a deliberate action, and we want to call a handball here. Any questions on this clip? Okay. So again, we'll get a replay here. So here we have a player who slides on the ground. This is another good example of a hand not in a natural position. So the arm up over the shoulder, up in the air, not close to the body, making the body unnaturally bigger, outside of the silhouette of the body. This is a good example, again, of a scenario where we want to call a handball. The arm is away from the body. It's making the body bigger. It's a deliberate action. Absolutely want to call a handball. Another good example of the ball coming from a short distance. The defending player not really having an opportunity to react to it at all. So it's not deliberate in that he has reacted and moved the hand towards the ball, but it is a situation where he has made his body unnaturally bigger and his hand is up above his shoulder, which is why we want to call a handball here. Good questions for those of you if it had hit the left hand. This is a perfect example of a player bracing themselves to go to ground. We would not have called a handball if it had hit the left hand. So as you can see here, as the player goes to ground, he puts the left hand down to brace himself. If the attacking player had cut the ball back into the left hand, we would not have called a handball because that is the kind of support that we're talking about when a player goes to ground. Even though that ball is outside the body, correct, because this is a natural position for a player bracing his fall. So this is the kind of scenario we want to be looking for. Now, if that slide continues and he reaches his arm farther out to the side, then definitely we can punish that. But in this moment right here, this is a natural way for him to brace this fall, and we would want to make sure that we don't call this a handball. So, as you can see here, arm up away from the body, over the shoulder, definitely want to call a handball here. Any questions on that one? All right. Next one. Oh, that's the same one. Apologize. So for those of you who asked earlier about what kind of scenario would exist where a defender's arm was above their shoulder and we don't want to call a handball, this is the one. Player jumps up. His arms are in a natural position when he jumps. That is very natural for a player who is jumping. The ball hits him in the side of the face and then immediately goes and hits his arm. You can see it in the slow motion replays. Here it hits the head and then the hand at above the shoulder. And that right there is the replay that gives you the best one. Hits his head here and then immediately comes down and hits the arm. Because the defender is running backwards, because this is an awkward way to attempt to play the ball, his arms naturally come out a little bit away from his body and up because he is jumping. He heads the ball, attempting to clear it. It misheads it. It hits the side of his face and goes down and immediately hits the arm. This is a scenario where we do not want to call a handball. Even though his arms are up and away from the body, we don't want to call a handball here. Again, as you can see, it scrapes off his head and then goes down and hits the extended arm, which is away from the body, above the shoulder. We do not want to call those a handball. That is not a deliberate action. It's not something he attempted to do. We do not want to punish a player for an action like that. Question here, what if the ball went up and hit the right hand? Same thing. If he has jumped in a natural way, which in this case, this is a very natural way to jump given that he's running backwards. If the ball skims off his own head and hits his hand, again, we are not going to call a handball because the law says if the ball comes off of the head or the body of the player and hits their own hand, we don't want to call a handball. So regardless of which hand it hits here, we're not going to call a handball because they're trying to head the ball. I understand that it's tough. I understand that's not a great feeling, and I know you're going to get people who want that. The easiest way to combat that is to quote directly from the laws of the game. The laws say that we're not going to call a foul if a player heads the ball into their own arm. So now here's where the laws get really messy for us. If this player heads the ball into the attacking player's arm, we are going to call a handball, because this handball, even if it's accidental on the attacker, would create an obvious goal scoring opportunity, and we need to call that a handball. So this is a scenario where we're not going to call a PK because this is a deliberate action. But if that same action was hit by the attacker, a goal would likely result from it. We don't want that to happen for the good of the game, so we would call a foul. Question here, if it does not hit his head first, then yes, absolutely. If the ball goes directly from the player's foot across the field and it just hits him in the arm with it extended out from the body, absolutely, that is a handball. The thing that doesn't make this a handball is the fact that it comes off of his own head and then directly onto his own arm. And that's what the laws specifically reference as scenarios where we don't want to call a handball. Question here, what foul would you call then? It would be a penalty kick. All handballs are direct free kick. There is no such thing as a handball on a field player that is called as an indirect free kick. The only person we can call a handball offense on is the goalkeeper if he picks up the ball on a pass back from his own team inside the penalty area. Any handball that happens outside the penalty area by any player on the field is a direct free kick. The goalkeeper inside the penalty area, we call an indirect free kick if he handles the ball. But any other player on the field, other than the goalkeeper handles the ball, it is a direct free kick. In this case, it would have been a PK if it hadn't hit his head first. Moving us along to the next one. So now we'll see the replays. And it's the last replay that tells you what happened. That one right there. So this is a good scenario of someone who is jumping to try to block a shot. The arm is extended out away from the body. Compare that to the one we saw earlier where the player had tucked his bicep down into his rib cage. This is one where the player's arm is extended out away from the body. Whether he intends to handle the ball or not, the arm is out away from the body, and therefore we have a handball decision here. The referee correctly sends this player off because were it not for the hand, the ball would have been in the back of the net. So this is a denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity. We want to send the player off for this. But as you can see, because the arm is extended out away from the body, making the body unnaturally bigger, we want to have a handball here. Any questions on that one? Pretty straightforward one. Again, same thing. Hand out from the body. All right, then moving us on to the next one. This one's a little harder to pick up, so we have to wait until the very end of the replay. Now we will watch this one again. So notice this player, number 21, as we watch this. As you can see here, he's running. The ball hits his own feet and then comes up and hits his own hand. So per the laws of the game, when we kick the ball into our own hand, we do not want to call a foul here. So in this scenario, number 21 here is running. The ball hits his own feet right here, and then bounces up and hits his hand. In this scenario, we do not want to call a handball here because he has played it off of his own feet up into his own hand. No handball per the laws of the game. Any questions on that analysis? Michael, you asked a question here. What foul would you call then? How about younger players age 9 or 10? I'm guessing that was for the last one. Again, the age is irrelevant here. If a player jumps up with their arms outstretched to the sides, it's a foul. It's a handball. And it's a direct free kick. In the laws of the game, handball is under direct free kicks. So anytime you have a handball that you call, it is a direct free kick. So, any other questions on the analysis of this clip? Because it has come off of his own feet, just to repeat, because it has popped up off of his own feet and then hit the hand, we do not want to have a handball here. So a question here, was there intention? If not, why not natural? Why not unnatural? Again, as the laws clearly state, if a player kicks the ball into their own hands, regardless of the position of the hands, we are not going to call a handball. So this is a scenario where the ball comes up off of the player's own feet into his own hands. It becomes irrelevant where the hands are because a player does not try to kick the ball into their own hand. Literally no player in the history of the game has tried to kick the ball into their own hand. And so IFAB looks at that and says, we don't want to punish that even if it hits the hand because that was definitely not a deliberate act, and we only want to try to punish deliberate acts where players have done something deliberate. And so this is a scenario where this player has done nothing deliberate at all, and per the laws of the game, we do not call a handball if they kick the ball up into their own hand. Now, if this same thing happens with an attacker and a goal scoring opportunity is created, then yes, we call a handball, but only because the goal scoring opportunity. IFAB does not want to see goals being scored unfairly or as the result of controversial plays. And so if it hits an attacker's hand in this same play and creates a goal scoring opportunity, then yes, we are going to call a handball. Next question here. I've had several cases where the ball was played by a player, hit the ground immediately, and then immediately bounced up and struck the arm. Should you be calling these? The answer is no. If they kick the ball and the next touch is into their own hand without touching another player, regardless of the ground or not, we're not going to call a handball here. So the question here, no matter how the hand or arm is positioned away from the body, if it hits the head and then hits the arm, it is not a handball. That is correct. Per the laws of the game, if they play the ball and the next touch off of a play goes into their hand, we don't want to call the handball. The scenarios where they are using their hands to deliberately corral the ball would be the exception to the rule. Like we talked about earlier, if a player is trying to trap the ball off their chest and they bring their arms in really tight so they basically catch it and then it goes down to their feet, then yes, we want to call that a handball, even though technically it hits their chest and then their hands. But in these scenarios where it's off the head, it's off the foot, it's off the thigh, it's off the knee, those kinds of scenarios, we don't want to call handballs because the player is not attempting to do that. We had a question here, will we post this so that we can show this in the future? Yes, we are recording this, and this will go onto our YouTube page, as all of our webinars do. So a couple more clips. So this is an example, getting just what we talked about here. The white team is the attacking team. And we have a player who handles the ball. Now, in this scenario, just like we talked about earlier, his hands are within the silhouette of the body. They are protecting the face. So in normal circumstances, we would not want to call that a handball. But because this is in the penalty area and because a goal scoring opportunity is likely to result from this accidental handball, we want to call a foul here. So again, this relates to the attacking player having the ball hit their hand unintentionally. We still want to call a foul here because the likely result of this is going to be a goal scoring opportunity. And per the laws of the game, any accidental handball that results in a goal scoring opportunity, we want to call a foul. So we have another question here. This relates back to the last clip. If the next touch is to the ground after the body and then the hand, is that a handball? I've already answered that question. A previous person asked that question. If it comes off their own body, bounces up, and hits their hand, no, we do not call a handball. If there is no touch between a player kicking or kneeing or chesting or heading the ball, if it doesn't hit another player and comes off the ground or directly up off their body and hits their hand, we're not going to call that a handball. If an attacker heads the ball into their own arm and creates a goal scoring opportunity, is this an offense? So again, all these scenarios, folks, before you ask these questions, I would ask you to really think clearly about what the law says. The law says if the ball touches the hand of an attacking player and then immediately creates a goal scoring opportunity, it is a handball. It doesn't say if it's on accident, does it? It says if the ball touches the hand of the attacker and then creates a goal scoring opportunity, we're going to call a handball. So Paul, your question here, if an attacker heads the ball into his own arm and creates a goal scoring opportunity is an offense, the law says if the ball touches the arm of an attacker, regardless of how it got there, if it touches the hand of the attacker and then creates a goal scoring opportunity, it's a handball. Don't make it any more complicated than that. And the next couple of clips are going to show that. Anytime the ball touches the hand of an attacker and a goal scoring opportunity is created, it doesn't matter how the ball got there, it doesn't matter any of that. If it touches the hand of the attacker and then becomes a goal scoring opportunity, it's going to be a handball. What about creating a promising attack? Yes, if it's going to create a goal scoring opportunity, we're going to call a handball. Notice the laws don't say an obvious goal scoring opportunity. They just say a goal scoring opportunity. So these are scenarios where if goal scoring opportunities are created, we want to call a handball. So in this scenario, again, attacker has the ball touch his hand on accident. Because it's the attacker and because a goal scoring opportunity is going to be created, we want to call a handball. If this is the defender that this happens to, this is not a handball. The only reason it's a handball is because a goal scoring opportunity is created. Moving us along to the next one. So again, this is another scenario where the arm is tucked into the body. It is within the silhouette of the body when the ball touches the hand. As a result, we would not call a handball here. The hand is within the silhouette. It's tucked into the body. The ball would have hit his chest had it not hit his hand. And so therefore, we do not want to call a penalty kick. Moving us along, just to wrap us up here. One more video. So again, another scenario where an attacking player, through complete accident, has the ball hit his hand. But because it's the attacker, we want to call a handball here. There's also the argument that the hand is up above the shoulder. But either way, this is going to be a promising attack, and therefore we want to call a handball. So, a lot of analysis tonight, a lot of clips. I will post this on YouTube later tonight or tomorrow so that you can review further. Are there any thoughts or any questions on the analysis we went through tonight about how to interpret handball and how to make these decisions? Okay, then I thank you for joining me this evening, and have a good night. And for those of you watching the Quakes game, have fun. Have a good night, guys. Answer to a quick question: how do we find it on YouTube? CNRA has a YouTube channel. You can search California North Referee Administration, and you will find our channel. And that is where you can find all of the webinar videos that we do. Good night, folks.